Hello, Colorado Realtors. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Legal Bites. I'm Scott Peterson. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I've had more and more problems come up, and primarily driven by kind of a high-velocity market. More and more problems come up, though, on the legal hotline. And so I just want to address real quickly and make sure that brokers are paying attention to paragraph 6.3 of the contract to buy and sell. 6.3 of the contract are lender property requirements. And there's some interesting, it's really one of the very, very limited outs that a seller has during the course of a contract period. So these are some buyer, seller, and broker considerations that I want to address real quick. So 6.3 lender property requirements, what are they? Generally speaking, a lender is going to step in at some point, occasionally anyhow, and mandate some improvements or property requirements that need to occur prior to their willingness to issue the loan. Hence the lender property requirements. Stuff that must be completed prior to closing based on what the lender is saying. So it's often going to be in conjunction, as you all know, with a VA or FHA loan. That's where you're going to see these probably most often. And they're generally going to be things related to the safety and habitability of the home or of the real estate. And obviously they frequently come via a VA or FHA appraisal where they add these minimum property requirements that need to be performed by the seller. So what happens then? So the seller, pursuant to 6.3, when they receive lender property requirements or minimum property requirements that need to be performed by the seller prior to closing, the contract gives the seller 3 days in their sole subjective discretion to terminate the contract. So the seller can terminate the contract in their own discretion, merely if they are requested that they perform these minimum property requirements. So it's a pretty big opportunity for a seller that wants to get out of a contract to get out of a contract. And it's really important, therefore, for brokers, particularly buyer agents, to understand the implications of that as their buyers or buyers' lenders are forcing them to send over either appraisals with minimum property requirements or some other independent request from a lender to perform, for a seller to perform certain things. So it's in the seller's sole subjective discretion per the contract to terminate unless one of three things occurs otherwise. And that's if the buyer and seller enter into some sort of a written agreement to resolve in some other manner those minimum property requirements. If the lender property requirements have already been completed, then a seller wouldn't have the ability to terminate the contract on that basis. And finally, if the buyer waives in writing the satisfaction of those requirements, then the seller would not have the opportunity to terminate the contract, or 3 days to terminate the contract. So pay attention to those considerations before the lender property requirements or minimum property requirements go over to that seller. Because it can lead to problems in this high-velocity market. There's an awful lot of situations where there are higher and better or more attractive offers, either backup offers or maybe even backup contracts. Again, in this market where a seller might really like the opportunity to get out of the first contract, and this would give them that opportunity. So make sure your buyers understand the implications of sending over a minimum property requirement request. Make sure that as a broker as a realtor, that you're explaining that to your buyers, and make sure the buyer's lender understands that aspect of the minimum property requirement request, and see if there's some other way, if there's a situation where you're aware that a seller might be looking to get out of a contract, some other way to accommodate a lender before sending those over. Because once that's issued, then a seller does have the sole subjective right to terminate that contract for 3 days. So keep that in mind. Pay attention to 6.3 in this high-velocity market where we do see a lot of sellers that are looking to get out of deals. As always, if you've got questions about this or anything else that might fall into the legal realm, Card Legal Hotline is available Monday through Friday from 9 to 12 and 1 to 4, and always a great resource for our members. Thank you so much for your membership in the association, and we'll see you on the next edition of Legal Bites.